Hello. I've been expecting you. Hello, everybody. Hello, film fans. As I've gotten into the habit of saying, it was never planned, but that's the habit I've fallen into. Humans are creatures of habits. Hello, film fans is how I'm going to start, how I'm going to continue to open these podcasts. Yep. If you can't see on the TV behind me, we are doing Get Out today. Jordan Peele's directorial debut. That dude is having an absolute stellar career as a director of feature films at the moment. Get Out, fantastic. Us, fantastic. The new one, Nope, fantastic. I know that the latter two, Us and Nope, have had mixed reviews from people. And hopefully one day I'll get round to analysing them, and maybe if you previously didn't like them, I will tell you what I loved about them, and it might change your viewpoint on it, but that's not the aim of these podcasts. I don't really care what your viewpoint is on it. Actually, no. Feel free to share your viewpoints on films with me. You know, jump into the old comment section on the socials, or email the email, which is still moviemondays at hotmail.com or something like that. It's on the social medias. Just find it, or just go on the social medias, which are all now Chatting Script. So Instagram is at Chatting Script, and Twitter is at Chatting Script. Just hit me up on there. It's easier for everybody involved. If you want to request any films for me to analyze, or any TV shows, if you want to debate me on anything, if you think what I've chatted was complete complete rubbish, then hit me up, dispute it. Anyway, so this is Get Out with the fantastic Daniel Kaluuya. Literally, in my opinion, the best actor of his generation. That dude is, just speak about his performances quickly, is like, he's so naturalistic. He's, okay, if you've listened to my other podcasts, you've heard about me talk about people like De Niro, or Brando even, where it's just, they're so living in the truth of their character that they don't need to show the audience what they're trying to portray. They're just living it. And then it's up to the audience to, interpret that whichever which way? Sure, why not? Whichever which way they want to. And that really... I think that's so. The best actors do that. I think there's nothing. Not discrediting any actors that are real sort of like showy with their emotions. Sometimes it's exactly what you need, and it can be really effective. But I just think the more nuanced, naturalistic, sort of just being. They're invested in their character, and then their character is acting moment to moment to moment. They're not using certain elements of the story or the script or anything to like showcase their own acting ability. Anyway, that's enough praise for Daniel Kaluuya. I'm sure I'll praise him more throughout this. Let's crack on with this. Actually as well, please do subscribe to anywhere you're listening to this podcast. I think on Spotify it's called Following, on Google or Amazon or whatever. Hit the follow or the subscribe. If you're on the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe. It will just help me out, raise sort of the profile of the pod. Follow me on the social medias. Like I said, it's at Chatting Script, so you never miss an episode. I tend to drop trailers on there as well, so if maybe I'm analysing a film you haven't heard of or seen, and you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll check that out. Just give the trailer a little watch, and it'll show you what you're getting yourself in for. Anyway. Let's crack on. Oh, and there's a good chance that this podcast may get flagged because I'm not going to wear headphones today, because if I remember, I've only seen this film once before and I loved it. But I remember it being quite, like the use of sound on it was quite important to the gravitas of this film, or like executing what this film wants to execute, which is, that's the case with most films, to be honest with you. But it occurred to me when I was editing my last one, Only God Forgives, that I was spending quite a lot of time trying to describe the soundscape to people, and I'm just going to try this time, and hopefully it doesn't get flagged and taken down and blocked or anything. If that does happen, I'll try and do a re-edit where I take out those parts where the sound is being played or whatever, and we'll just have to see. Like I say, you know, a lot of this pod stuff is, especially the video component part, is, you know, new to me in the sense that I'm just trying stuff out, throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. So anyway, that's enough rambling. Let's get rolling. And of course I have coffee, because what else am I going to drink? I literally only drink coffee and water. That's it. That's all I drink. Coffee and water. And a Barocca in the morning, which is just water with vitamins in it. So I stay hydrated and then I dehydrate with a coffee. Okay. As opening shots go, I really like that. God, that was a bit Garth Brooks, wasn't it? I really like that. Just, you know, the orange of the street lamps, the blue of what I'm assuming would be the moonlight. It's been slowly tracking backwards. There's crickets. We can hear someone talking. They're sounds like they're on a phone or something, and they're, you know, confused about sort of where they are or the place they're trying to find or anything. So straight away you're a bit like, a little bit of fish out of water thing, but just a real nice, simple opening shot. And there's like can you hear the undertone? Don't know if you can hear that undertone, but there's like a humming of just an unnerving bit of music. So, like I said before, establishing shots, important, sets the scene, lets the audience know what's happening. Also, Lakeith Stanfield, this dude, let's get a better shot of him. Lakeith Stanfield, what's that amazing film he did with Emma Thompson, where they're like salespeople? Thank You for Calling, I think it's called Thank You for Calling. This dude, Lakeith Stanfield, is insane as well, like top tier actor. If you haven't seen him in some stuff, check out some stuff. I'm pretty sure Thank You for Calling is what it's called. It's something like that. Just IMDb, Lakeith Stanfield and Emma Thompson, they're in the film together. It's a brilliant film. But yeah, this dude, whenever I see him, he never misses his quality. That's a better shot of him. See? That guy. And this has been a nice oneer so far, you know, from the opening shot to him, the car going past. There hasn't been any cuts at all. Nice little oneer. You hear that? That car radio is playing Run, Rabbit, Run, Rabbit, Run, Run, Run. So straight away building up a bit of eeriness. His performance is also selling it as well. So like, not just to praise his acting, but you know, if his performance in this, so this would be important for the director to communicate to the actor. If the actor wasn't sort of like doing it, would be that like you need to be demonstrating or, you know, performing with a certain amount of like anxiety or uncertainty in, you know, walking down that street trying to find the destination, so that the audience then empathizes with you and starts to feel that, you know, nervousness and that uncertainty. So it all builds and works together. The, you know, the crickets in the background, the Run Rabbit soundtrack of the car, the way it's just sort of parked there and is like creeping up on him. All these layers. Ogres are like onions with layers. Okay, and that's the first cut we've had. So all those oneers have been, apart from the establishing shot, but then Lakeith Stanfield walks into the frame, and then it's all pretty much quite tight on him. We're looking at like essentially a close-up because it's shoulders to head, more or less. Sorry, I'm still getting over that flu that I had the other week. I'm pretty much out of it now, but all this cold weather has just meant my nose has been running like a tap. So I do apologize if there's sniffing and, you know, gross noises throughout this podcast. But, you know, time waits for no man, and I'm going to get these podcasts done regardless of health. So I'm a trooper, and, you know, praise me. I'm kidding. So this is the first cutaway we've had. And the fact that all these other shots of Lakeith were, like I say, close-ups, and then we cut to a nice big wide. For me, that sort of shows that he's like almost like lost to the audience now. Like he's in the distance, so he's out of our like ability to sort of help him or save him. Like he's almost gone kind of thing. And then I don't know if you heard that, but the like the Run Rabbit score was still playing. It was like taking over the audio soundtrack essentially. There wasn't a lot else. And then when he slams down the boot after he stuffed Lakeith in there, that slam cut the music, and all of a sudden we get the first use of the eerie violin score in this. Like, listen to this. Yeah. So now we're involved. I want to say as well, Caleb Landry Jones, also an absolute stellar actor. If you haven't seen him in a lot, he was in this. He was, what was the character's name in, the new X-Men movies they're doing with First Class and Days of Future Past and all that? I think it's Banshee. His power is like this supersonic scream thing. But probably one of the best films he's done other than this in terms of his individual performance and the quality of the film. Not that those new X-Men films aren't great. They're pretty good. Is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. He plays that, I can't remember what his job role is, but he's sort of opposite like an office kind of guy, opposite the police station, and he has a bit of a scuffle, we'll say, with Sam Rockwell, who plays one of the police officers. He's class in that film. He's a real great actor as well. There's so many awesome young actors in this that are like, they're already fairly established, but like, they're sort of getting their chops in, cutting their teeth pretty well. Just how unnerving this score is. It's proper like almost Friday the 13th with the whispering, that kill, 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 and all that. So I'll pause it here because I'm worried that at the moment Childish Gambino's it's not Stay Woke, Redbone is playing over the top, and what a song! But when a song that sort of famous, I worry that if I put that out, it will get, as part of the pod, it will get flagged like straight away. I love Childish Gambino. He's amazing. But these shots establishing this apartment, it's giving us a real sense of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like a real quaint, nice, happy home sort of life setting that they've got here. Everything's really neat. They've got all their amenities, centipedes. I don't know. They got all their stuff. It all looks nice and catered for. They're not wanting for things. It's clean. It's actually a really nice apartment. Loads of natural light coming in there. God damn. Yeah. So, I feel like that's a precursor to, the ultimate sort of like downhillness that happens. Like we're starting all nice and happy and cheery and all this good shit. And it can only go downhill from here. So the scene we just had back then was them at the apartment and him sort of saying to her like, hey, I'm going to go meet your parents with you. Do they know that I'm black? And her being like, it's not an issue. Like, my parents aren't racist, or, just softening any like concerns he may have had. And it's a real sweet, intimate scene with them. Like, the sort of more vulnerable they get with each other during that scene, the tighter the shots get on them. It sort of starts with mediums and kind of wides because they're on like separate parts of the room. They get a bit closer, we switch to mediums, they get more intimate and vulnerable, talking about this important stuff, and the cameras get closer to them, close-ups, and it's nice intimate. It's really brightly and softly lit, so there's no like harsh lines and shadows on their faces and stuff. It's all real sort of soft lighting, but still really bright. So it's just completely like safe and happy, and is of course a juxtaposition to where the story goes, and also leads the, spoiler alert if you haven't seen this film by the way, but it also leads the audience into a false sense of security about this bitch. That's all I'm going to say for now. Yeah, jump scares, motherfucker. See, some people think jump scares are cheap, but when they're done well, like that, where you're completely unexpecting any sort of jump scare to happen. Excuse me one moment. Jump scares, when they're telegraphed. What I mean by telegraphed is in like, say in like boxing, for example, if you're going to go throw a punch and you like, really telegraph the movement's coming and then you throw the punch, the other boxer knows it's coming because you've telegraphed it. So when you telegraph a jump scare, for example, it's when you're like, you might have a shot of a character in a in a house where you know there's a killer about, and it's been established that the killer is like, you know, in one of the rooms near them or whatever, and they're walking through the house. Pardon me. And they, like, you know, look around a corner, and you're expecting the scare, and then as the camera cuts back around to the person, the killer's behind them, and then that's the jump scare kind of thing. It's telegraphed, so you can preempt it, so it's not as shocking, and then it's a little bit cheap. But like that, where we literally just had them driving down the road, sort of bantering with each other, being all happy and flirty, and then all of a sudden, bam, they hit a deer, and it's a big noise, you know, so the big... That's why I wanted you to hear the sound this time. You get the big thing sort of straight away of the noise and everything, and the car screeching as they slam on the brakes and everything. And then this awesome wide shot again. Not quite symmetrical, probably wasn't intended to be symmetrical, but it sort of really establishes that they're like way out in the sticks with not a whole lot of help or aid should anything bad happen. See, look at his performance right here. He wasn't like telegraphing that he's telegraphing, and he wasn't, you know, showcasing that he's like looking for something. He's not like doing any scaring. He's just looking. He's just being. He's not showing off to the audience like, oh, look how good I am at searching for the thing that hit our car. He's just looking for it. Naturalism, man. Underrated in cinema these days. And now I think he's seen what it is that it's here, and for me he looks like he feels sad about it, like he feels maybe a little bit guilty, or he's sad that, you know, the deer, I think it's a deer that they've hit, is dying, you know. Look, to me that looks like a sad expression, but he's not, you know, showing off to the camera like, oh, we hit a deer. He's just, man, that sucks, we hit a deer. Do you know what I mean? If you don't know what I mean, figure it out. I do like this though, how this is really building the tension, because we still haven't had a good look at it. We could see it then, but it was out of focus. Now we can see it, but with this score building up in the background, it's all very like unnerving. You just think like, what's going through his head now? Like, he's just had that sort of weird connection with a dying animal. And he's just sort of pondering that. And with the unnerving score, it's like, I don't know, is that like an omen that maybe he's moving towards something that he shouldn't be moving towards? I mean, maybe I'm reading that into it because I've seen the film before, but yeah, never know. I paused that on an amazing shot of her. Important story beat there for her as well. So after they hit the deer, they obviously call the police to report it or everything, and the officer's like, oh yeah, it's fine, but you need to call animal control next time instead. And then Daniel Kaluuya, who's not even having that conversation with the officer, she is, because she was the driver. The police officer asks him for his ID, and she straight away is like, hang on, why? You shouldn't have to give your ID. And obviously it's like, it's a bit of a social commentary on the whole idea of, you know, police officers, be it in America or the UK or sort of anywhere, having prejudices towards people of colour, and, you know, sort of using their power, you know, the power of the police in a kind of racist way, which does happens, you know, it's reported on, I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's reported on countless times in America, and it happens way more in the UK than you would believe. If you don't believe me on that, do some research on it and educate yourself. I'm not going to get into it right now. But it's an important story beat for her to jump to his defense, because like I said, in that opening scene, or not opening scene, that secondary scene where she's talking about her family, you know, not being racist, and that they will be welcoming to him and they won't be, you know, judgmental or anything about his color. Again, she's jumping to his defense and she's being supportive. So it's leading the audience to like her and know that she is on his side, which obviously, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the film, I'm going to spoil something, a bit of a twist near the end. So close your ears for about 20 seconds if you don't want to know. Is that she is not a good person. And this is all an act and a mask. But obviously from the audience, where you're being drip-fed these moments where she is being a good person, that's obviously the impression you're going to have. So it's important story beats, and it's important that those are written through the script. So this is interesting. I haven't quite formulated what I think about it yet, but since they pulled up, the shots of... We've only had this wide shot of this house and him walking up the stairs and then greeting the parents. Sorry, them too, both of them walking up the stairs and greeting the parents. And I guess that's similar. Yeah, okay, I've formulated it now. You ready? Here we go. You know, the first things first. Ah, yes, Sean Connery. Sure, what the shot is representative of is that opening scene where we had Lakeith Stanfield being taken away into the car and slammed in the boot. And the shot was very wide, and I'm going to stop this now. And that was him being lost, you know, like the audience can't help him. He's that ship has sailed kind of thing. It's reminiscent of that. It's like, he's walking through the threshold of, you know, sanctuary, being able to escape, and, you know, going too far away from the audience and things is he's in danger now. That's what I'm reading into that wide shot. It might just be a wide shot because that property's fucking amazing, but I'm reading that into it. Oh, of course, yeah. And then as they go through the door, it pulls back to reveal the groundskeeper, who, this is going to sound bad if you haven't seen the film, but it's important, and it's actually a story beat in the film. We have to acknowledge the fact that this groundskeeper is black, okay? That becomes important. I'm not just pointing it out for the sake of pointing out someone's colour. I'm not that ignorant, trust me. But that's why we're pulling back into this wide. And maybe as well, it's marring, the fact that we haven't had any close-ups yet on the parents, is it's marring them with a sense of mystery or uncertainty. Like, because we're not in a personal distance to them yet, in terms of, you know, being right up close to them with some close-ups and stuff. We don't know what they really look like. We don't know how they are. We don't know if we can trust them, you know. So maybe it's also that. Maybe it's a multitude of things. Maybe Jordan Peele just wanted to do a wide, and I'm reading way too much into it. This film, it makes you uncomfortable with... Okay, so they told the parents that they hit a deer on the way, and then the dad is going full, like, there's two ways you can read into this, or maybe it's a combination of the two. He's going full, like, dad mode, trying to make silly jokes. It sounds like he's being sarcastic. Oh yeah, one dead deer, 100,000 more to go. They're like rats. They're taking over the countryside. I don't like them. Blah blah blah. You could read into that. Oh, he's just being silly, and he's trying to make them feel better about the fact that they accidentally killed the deer and blah blah blah. He's not actually like anti-deer. But there's a shot. Shall I rewind to it as he's talking? It's that shot. This is, I literally paused it as he said, they're like rats. That's Daniel Kaluuya's face. And to me, maybe I'm just projecting this onto it because I know the broader context of the film, but it's almost like he's hearing the dad talk about deer, but is the dad using that as like a cover-up or a metaphor for talking about people that aren't white? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading way too much into that. Maybe this is a bit too heavy. But, you know, a lot of this film is a social commentary on racism and, you know, the ignorance of white people towards people of color. Again, I'm well aware that I'm incredibly white. So, like, I don't want any of this to come across like I'm white-splaining anything. But that's what the sort of the undertones and the commentary of this film is, and that's partly what makes it a fantastic film. Just speaking about horror movies in broader strokes, I do find that the best horror movies are the ones with some sort of social commentary. So let's look at George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. So the Night of the Living Dead, if you're not aware, was 68 or 69. It was black and white. And that was the first film to introduce what you would naturally now think of when someone says zombies. So here's a little bit of cinema history for you if you're not aware. Prior to that film, any use of zombies always came from like a voodoo sort of, I want to say culture, but that feels like the wrong word. It was always inspired by some sort of voodoo, like White Zombie, which is not only Rob Zombie's band before Rob Zombie went solo as Rob Zombie, but it's also a film released in the 50s where this voodoo person, I don't know what you call them, a shaman, voodoo shaman, basically like casts spells and shit, and it's essentially like a brainwashing thing, turns people into zombies in the brain dead sense of being a zombie, not the undead sense of being a zombie. So George A. Romero comes along and introduces zombies in that living dead, flesh eating, that kind of zombie, you know, the slow shuffle, and all that shit. You know, The Walking Dead wouldn't be The Walking Dead if George A. Romero didn't do that to zombies. But the social commentary of that film, Night of the Living Dead, is about racism. So the central character is a black guy, and a lot throughout the film, he's subjugated to, you know, judgment or straight up racism, or not treated as equal, or not trusted, or not listened to, or not respected as much as like the rest of the white cast. And then spoiler alert for the very end of that film, so again, plug your ears if you don't want to hear it, but at the very end of the film, he's literally like last man standing after pretty much everyone else has been killed by the zombies, and a wave of like sheriffs and police officers come sort of sweeping through the countryside where the film is set, and see him like hiding out. They're killing zombies left, right and center, these sheriffs, right? Just trying to clear the landscape, basically. They see him sort of hiding out in this house, I think he's peering through a window. It's been a few years since I've seen it. He's peering through a window with a gun, like trying to see if he's okay and stuff, you know, checking if the coast is clear or whatever. And the sheriffs are like, oh yeah, there's a zombie. Yeah, quick, shoot that guy. You know, just it's really apparently clear that the sheriffs are literally just like, oh, here's an opportunity to kill a black guy just because they are racist, kind of thing, you know? So that's the social commentary in that one. Whereas Dawn of the Dead, the sequel to that, is in color and is widely considered like the best zombie movie ever made. Zack Snyder did a remake of it in the early 2000s. Equally brilliant. Maybe not equally brilliant, but it's brilliant. But either way, the commentary of the original Dawn of the Dead is the one where they're trapped in the shopping mall. And it's a commentary on consumerism, because there's so many shots throughout the film where you just have all these zombies wandering around this shopping mall, you know, walking past like various department stores, jewelry stores, electronic stores, all these things, just brain dead, being zombies and that. And it's basically a reflection of kind of, it wouldn't be too different if these people weren't zombies, if they were still people walking around, you know. So that very long drawn out point was saying that in my opinion, the standout horror films do tend to have some sort of social commentary, and this one in particular is very, very, very much about, like, if you didn't pick up on that when you watched it, then wake up, but is very, very much about race and, you know, yeah, I think I've said enough. Let's carry on. But this shot to me, just around that back, this shot to me is like him hearing undertones, and the dad talking about the dead deer, is him hearing the undertones of, you talking about deer, or you talking about black people? What are you doing here, man? That exchange was great. This little exchange, watch this exchange. So the dad is giving Chris a tour of the house. Is there anything more boring, more unnecessary than when you go to someone's house and they give you a tour of the fucking house? Show me where we're hanging out. show me where the toilet is, and show me where I can, refill my glass, with like water or beer or whatever it is that we're doing, whatever the hangout is that we're happening. Show me those things. Where can I sit? Where do I get food and drink? And where do I piss? You don't need to give me a tour, right? I hate it. It's so stupid. All it is an excuse for whoever's house it is to brag about, look at all this shit I have. Fuck you. But look at this exchange. He's like, save me. She's like, I can't. And he's like, oh, I just have to tolerate this shit. Oh, man. Such expert written dialogue from Jordan Peele, the writer and director, if you want to, of this film. So they just saw on this grand tour that he's doing, they had the photo of his old man, as in the dad's old man, basically being an Olympic athlete, and the story that he gives it is he was beaten to a medal by Jesse Owens, the guy who won Olympic gold in front of Hitler in, what would that have been, like the 1930 something Olympics. I don't know what it was, 38, 39, something like that. And the dad's like, oh yeah, brilliant, fuck all that Aryan master race bullshit. And he goes, yeah, my old man nearly got over it, which is sort of, like a little subtle joke. And then he's like, oh, that's the basement, we had to seal it off, there was a lot of black mold. He like emphasizes black when he says black mold. So that might just be me reading into it, but you're like, okay. But again, because I know the broader context of this film and what this family are actually like. And then they walk into the kitchen and he says, oh, this was my mother's favorite place, we keep a little piece of her in there. And then the person Daniel Kaluuya is looking at right now is the housekeeper, looks like a housekeeper, got rubber gloves on and some sort of like, penny apron thing. And it's a black woman. So he's seen the black groundskeeper. Now he's seen a black housekeeper. So he's like, rich white people, all the help around the house seems to be black. So, there's like all these little drip feeding moments of oddness and strange, not play on words, but strange choices of words from the dad in that. So that's a important sort of suspicious story beat as well. He says, as they walk out into this huge garden, the dad says to Chris, the nearest house is way across the lake, total privacy. Just an important story beat, because that's telling the audience, like, if shit goes down, there is not a lot of help anywhere. Again, subtle hints that this family aren't what they say they are. This lovely woman is coming around, refilling everybody's glass. No one is even, apart from Daniel Kaluuya, no one is even acknowledging that she's there, never mind saying thank you for filling up the glass. Little subtle story beats. That scene, like, I don't know, this, again, I don't want to come off like I'm white-splaining or anything, or acting like I've got any sort of, like, authority to talk on this in any way. But I want to phrase it as it's like an educational scene for white people to sort of learn or realize that, like, when you're talking to a person of color, black, brown, Asian, whatever, any person of color, they are more than the color of their skin, right? So this scene, you've got Caleb Landry Jones talking across the table to Daniel Kaluuya and asking him, are you into UFC, MMA? Pardon me, that type of stuff. And he's like, no, too brutal for me. And then Caleb's character says, with your frame and your genetic makeup, if you really trained, you'd be a fucking beast. So what he's doing is saying that, like, based on literally the fact that you are a large black person, if you trained hard, you'd be a good fighter. Where it's like, how do I explain this without sounding like I'm fucking white-splaining this, or like pretending I don't have any authority or any like right to really sort of comment on this. But what I can say from experience, you know, I've probably been guilty of it myself. I definitely know friends and family that have been guilty of it, but this scene is a bit of an eye-opener in the sense that, like, you shouldn't do that. Ultimately, it's pretty ignorant to do that, to just make statements or assumptions about someone based on their ethnicity. It's just don't do it, you know? I don't really, and this is again the social commentary thing I was talking about in the makeup of this film and why this film is good, because it ultimately feeds into a sinister motive from Claire's family. Is it Claire? Is that the girl's name in this? I can't remember now. So yeah, it's all part of the makeup of the story. But yeah, you know, it's setting the fucked upness. And look at him. He is like, this bullshit again. Every fucking white person I have to speak to is gonna, you know, they're not seeing the person underneath. They're only seeing the exterior. I don't know if I worded that right or if that came across really ignorant, but it was supposed to be done with empathy and understanding, so hopefully it came across that way. You hear how great that use of sound was? Hopefully the mic picked up the speaker. I moved the speaker there earlier. Hopefully that helps. So he's there sort of dazing, and the shots of him in the bedroom there sort of dozing. There's the sound of a fly buzzing around, and then it cuts to sort of like a, not quite a black and white, but sort of like greyed out shot. It was more or less the same shot of when he was approaching the deer in the bushes that they hit on their way to the house. And then the deer is like, you know, moaning. It was doing that like, and then that matches the sound of the fly buzzing, and then all of it is cut by him slapping his face to sort of slap the fly. It's just an unnerving, sort of unsettling layering of that soundscape, and not quite a jump scare, but almost a jump scare. Jesus Christ, I'm doing that thing again where I over talk about the first like half an hour of the film, and then I have to like skip over some shit at the end just to, you know, not make the podcast last 3 hours. That made me jump. That was a good jump scare. As he's walking through the house, you might have heard the ding. Then there's, what was her name? Was it Gloria? Georgina? Began with a G. Either way, she walked through the background of the hallway as he's on his way out to smoke. See, that is so unnerving. Like, let's go back a little bit. So he's walking out in the in the garden to have a cheeky cigarette. There's nothing there. And then as soon as we cut back and see this dude sprinting at him, the violins. So that violins mixed with him just giving it legs straight towards Daniel Kaluuya is so unnerving. Like, and it's only intercut between this and Daniel Kaluuya's sort of reaction of like, what the fuck is this dude just running straight at me? It's just really unnerving. Like, I think it's the fact that the camera holds for quite a long time on this, so there's no like reprieve from it, and any reprieve you do get is Daniel Kaluuya looking a bit concerned. So there's no sort of chance for the audience to feel like we're able to escape it, you know? But even just that, look at Daniel Kaluuya's, he's not overselling that he's scared or intimidated by this. He's just, you know, he's shuffled. Let me press play and hopefully I paused it at the right time, but he's just shuffling back a bit. Look. See, just shuffles back a bit. You hear the noise of the spoon scraping around that teacup. The gentle ting, ting, and the, you know, as it hits the rim of it, ting, ting, and as it scrapes the rim of it. It's important sound layering. Now we get it. That was a close-up just then of the teacup. So now it's drawing attention to the fact that she's still stirring it. Why is she still stirring it? So now the camera's starting to move in as she's like broken down his defenses and she's her questions are working and prying at him. This is the hypnotic scene. The scene where she does some hypnosis. The hypnosis scene. There we go. The camera's starting to move in on him now. So it was basically just this, and we're starting to move in now because she's getting what she wants from him. He's becoming susceptible and vulnerable. So this is the sinking moment where she says sink into the floor, and he sinks down. It's my understanding, based on interviews I've seen or read with Jordan Peele and Daniel Kaluuya and the makers of this film, is that the sinking is representative of, like what I was talking about with Caleb, Landry Jones's character, only viewing Daniel Kaluuya's character as surface level, i.e. the colour of his skin. So with the sinking feeling, from my understanding again, from what I've seen and heard and read, is that it's, again, I don't want to sound like I'm talking about this from any level of authority. I'm one of the whitest people on planet Earth. But it's supposedly representative of the sinking feeling is like the personality or the characteristic or like the self of the individual, person of color feels like they have to sink back, or is forced to sink back and hold back their true, sense of self or characteristic or whatever, to be welcomed into, white society. I hope I've worded that sensitively enough and accurately enough. But I'm pretty confident that's the social commentary aspect of it. So what this film is doing so expertly is transferring that into a sort of horror scape, in the sense of it, being a horror or thriller movie. So yeah, it's like they're either not able to show their sort of, I was going to say true colours, but that's not supposed to sound as insensitive as it sounds. Their true sense of self, either through fear of some sort of ignorant or uneducated judgment from white people, or some sort of sense of being tarred with an inaccurate brush or something. I really hope I'm wording this well and doing the film justice, and not sounding ignorant, or not sounding like authoritarian on any of these issues, because of course I'm not. And if I'm wrong about any of it, please feel free to educate me in any way. Do it nicely, but anyway, it's very powerful social commentary, at least from my experience. But and what an effect as well. I'd love to know how they did this, just from a sort of practical effects standpoint. I'm pretty confident that Jordan Peele is a fan of practical effects. So is this wire work with a big fan or something? What's all going on? I've been chatting a lot of shit chatting a lot of script throughout this podcast. Lakeith Stanfield from the opening scene, now all clean shaven, wearing very different stylistically clothes to what he was previously wearing. Different demeanour. The plot thickens. Something as well, actually, about the similar to that other Lakeith Stanfield thing. I'm pretty sure it's called Thank You for Calling. Let me double check. Sorry to bother you. It's called Sorry to Bother You. I knew it was something about like a play on words for like when like a salesperson calls up and they're like, "Oh, sorry to bother you." Of course, it wouldn't be "Thank you for calling," because that would imply the person receiving the sales call is grateful for the sales call. It's called Sorry to Bother You. That's the Lakeith Stanfield and Emma Thompson film I mentioned earlier. Great film, but there's this sort of running like a joke or theme throughout the film that people like Lakeith Stanfield, when they're in the office making these sales calls, they have to adopt a white voice. And who is it that does Lakeith's? Let me see. Yeah, it's David Cross. Yeah. Yeah, I love David Cross. If you don't know David Cross, he's normally bald with big glasses, and he's in anything from Men in Black to Arrested Development. He's in loads of stuff. If you don't know him by name, he's one of those people when you see him, you go, "Oh, that dude, he's in everything." But yeah, he has like one of those really kind of nasal, white-sounding voices, and he does Lakeith Stanfield's white voice in "Sorry to Bother You." And don't know if you've noticed, but again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film, but talking in the sort of broader context of this film, everyone that's been hypnotized and then put into the sunken place by the hypnotist, anyone from the groundskeeper to the housekeeper, I can't remember her name, and Lakeith Stanfield now, like I said, different demeanor, different voice, different costume. They all have a more like white voice, so it's all sort of playing on the idea that when they're in the sunken place, they have to change elements of their personality or demeanor or anything to sort of, be accepted, or it's a defense mechanism because when they are their truer selves, they're then subject to a lot of like ignorant comments or statements or stereotypes. Like if someone, let's just broadly speaking, say if someone of color is using slang and colloquialisms, that opens the door for a lot of ignorant people to make assumptions about them. Any sort of assumptions. It might be really racially charged negative assumptions, like just as an example, like, oh, you're more prone to like thievery or something. Again, really ignorant, really racist, not okay to think that. But then it also could be other things that aren't okay to think or presume, that the person presuming them or thinking them doesn't realize are racist because they're, what's that expression? Is it microaggressions? It could be something like, oh, you must play basketball. And they're thinking that that's complimentary because it implies like that they're suggesting the person is of, good physical stature or something. But it's ultimately an assumption based on that person's ethnicity. So it's still under the sort of shroud or umbrella of ignorance. So, yeah, I can't remember where I was taking that, but yeah, it's just interesting sort of plot device based on the actors' individual portrayals. It's good filmmaking. It's not, like I say, it's layers. It's in the script, and then it's up to the actors to execute those beats and those plot points. It was an interesting cut just then as he's talking to the blind art dealer, and it's the first like white person Daniel Kaluuya's met at this party that isn't just, doing all the shit I was just describing, just being like ignorant or overtly racist. But there's kind of like an unwritten rule with screenwriting that you either start in the middle of a conversation or you cut away and leave in the middle of a conversation, just for pace and sort of retaining audience attention, I think, more than anything else. And it also helps get rid of a lot of unnecessary fluff, or it can also help build suspense. So, for example, if you cut away in the middle of a conversation and the conversation isn't resolved and the audience doesn't hear everything that plays out, we're left curious as to what that is, and then it can be used as, a plot twist or a big reveal later on. Likewise, if you start in the middle of a conversation, you can get straight to the brass tacks and, the real importance without all the fluff of, hey, how are you? How have you been? Long time no see. Anyway, down to business. You just straight down to business. And that scene then just did that. So he spoke to the art dealer, important information in terms of story and things was exchanged, and character in terms of that art dealer's character, he becomes relevant later on. And then we cut away because there's no need for further pleasantries and niceties. So if you're writing scripts and stuff, just bear that in mind. because Jordan Peele knows what he's doing. This is just a point as well from a writing perspective, is it's really important when you're writing character to have every character or every person or demographic will have a certain way of speaking. So, for example, the rich white people in this film are, well spoken and fancy, and then the black people that get hypnotized and put into the sunken place adopt that way of speaking. Now he's on the phone to one of his friends who's looking after his dog while he's away. They have a completely different way of speaking, more slang, more colloquialisms. So it's Jordan Peele he's using that deliberately as a story mechanic, but just generally speaking, when you're writing story, if you're writing like a white working class man, they're probably going to have like, a certain amount of slang, but more like sort of poor grammar, or maybe a more narrow vocabulary, maybe more vulgar, cursing, things like that. It's stereotypical of me to say that, but you might lean into that. Whereas if you're writing a character that was Eton or Oxford educated, they might be a lot more well spoken. You get what I mean. That's enough examples. Even then, Jordan Peele's writing and use of language is fantastic. And I don't mean language in terms of like he's writing in Spanish and English and French or whatever. I just mean language in terms of phrasing and colloquialism. So he says, he's talking to Georgina, about the housekeeper, about unplugging his phone, and she's coming to apologize. And he's saying, "Oh no, it's cool. I wasn't trying to rat you out." And she's like, "Rat you out? What does that mean?" And he's like, "Snitch." And she's like, "Tattletale." So again, it's, he's using more sort of urban colloquialisms, and she's like, tattletale, a really sort of like white sounding thing. And it just reinforces her whole, like, the fact that she's, hypnotized down in that sunken place. Yeah. This film is so well crafted. What a performance from her in this scene. What is this actress's name? Just to go through that massive range. Betty Gabriel. Well done, Betty. Just to go through this massive range of emotions and expressions. Really good shit. See, straight away, he's just been introduced to some new people, majoritively white, and the first thing he is asked is about being African American. This is, again, playing on that theme that I was talking about earlier of people only addressing Chris, or the wider commentary is like people of color in general, that when, normally when white people, if you don't have a lot of black friends, or you don't hang around with a lot of black people, or even, other people of color, there does tend to be that stereotype of white people just only asking them things based on the color of their skin. And it doesn't, if you have good intentions, it might not seem to you as though it is racist or ignorant, but it is racist or ignorant, because it might not be overtly discriminatory or judgmental, towards them based on their color, but it is the fact that you're only allowing their personality to exist within the fact that they are of color. Okay, I think that's probably the best I've worded that point that I've been trying to make throughout this film. But that is the reason I keep saying it again. I don't want to sound like I'm talking from any authority, but that is what this film is saying. That is the social commentary of this film. So that's why I keep coming back to it. Okay, cool. Look at the lighting in this scene, comparatively to when I was talking about the opening scene, where they were in the apartment. They were talking about race and like the idea of her family being racist or anything. There we go. That's a better shot. And how soft and almost like friendly the lighting was. It was no harsh shadows or anything on their faces. And now the story's ramping up a little bit. Some things have happened. There's been some tension and all that. And there's these, very prominent shadows and and more harsher use of light. Even though it's natural light, they're out in the sun and things, but you know, to the average audience member, you're like, oh, but sunlight on their faces and things, but it's very likely deliberate setup, lighting rigs and things like that. They may have been very lucky and just had a really awesome, sun in the perfect position with the perfect lighting and everything. But just knowing the nature of films, filming this two-hander scene between him and Rose. Her name wasn't Claire, by the way. I don't know why I called her Claire earlier. Her name is Rose. Yeah, they may have been very lucky, but it's more likely that it is a deliberate setup lighting rig, and it's created all these like shadows and harsh lines and things on their faces. So that brightness and warmth and softness and sort of happiness and safety of that first scene with those two is very different now. I'm literally I've seen this film already. I'm literally getting like fucking heart palpitations. The sense of like the adrenaline and suspense building in this scene is so beautifully constructed. So like I've said before, suspense and tension is I'm pretty sure Tarantino said this because I can't not reference that guy. Picture an elastic band, and the tighter and further and longer you can stretch out that elastic band, the more the suspense is generated palpably. So you've got so many things adding up here. There's the score in the background, which is like some awkward sustained strings. You've got Caleb Landry Jones twirling the lacrosse stick, and then he's like juggling it between his hands. So it's like, which is like that's a weapon fundamentally. If he wanted to use it as such, he could use it as a weapon. So you've got that reminder of that there. You've got Daniel Kaluuya's performance where he's showcasing nervousness, and there's a quiver in his voice. His expressions are not, he's not chill right now. You've got Rose, because we've just had a bit of a reveal from her where he's seen photographs of her with someone who is quite obviously a partner who happens to be black, whereas it was established early on she told Daniel Kaluuya that he was her first black boyfriend. So but now we know that's a lie. There's also a photo of her there with the housekeeper, Georgina. Is it Georgina? Whatever her name is. Looking very different aesthetically to how she is in housekeeper mode, similar to Lakeith Stanfield's character, where he was more himself at the start, and now he's been like whiteified with his little hat and shit when he's in the hypnosis state. And then we've got the idea that he's being surrounded. So the room to his left, the father's just appeared down the hallway. The mother's there with her teacup. We're starting to hear that noise build up. Caleb Landry Jones is blocking the doorway. The stairs, the only other route to salvation. Rose is still stood there, blocking them. He's been surrounded. So you've got all these layers. Just, it's making me so anxious. And I know how the scene plays out because I've seen the film, but I'm still like, my heart was like, dude, masterfully constructed scene. Oh, that's so sinister. She said to him, "You're one of my favorites." So that, coupled with the pictures of her with another black dude, just implies that they've been at this several times and they're a really fucked up group of people. Damn. Symmetry. Look at that shot. What a shot. I fucking love symmetry in films. Just something about it so satisfying. I want to say she's doing a tremendous performance here because she's utilizing a lot of emotion purely with her voice, and then her face is just like stoic and bored and uninteresting because she's lying and pretending to Rod on the phone to him, pretending that she cares. But just from an acting perspective, that's incredibly hard to do, to emote so strongly with your voice but leave your face completely stoic and like dormant. The intense symmetry. Let's rewind. So this music, and then look how brutal the lighting is, It's relatively dark scene, but these very brutal lights, and this just looks... It almost looks violent to me, It's all the harsh angled lines within it, It's very cold, It's not inviting or comforting or warm in any way. Who the fuck uses candles in a fucking surgical procedure? That just seems dangerous, because when the candle flickers, it plays with your vision a little bit. It all looks very cold and hostile and violent, and there's no softness. There's no softness at all. All the lines, this framework, these straps, this isn't a nice neat circle. It's what is that? An octagon, a pentagon, a hexagon, a pentagon. There's no softness anywhere, but it's symmetrical. And this performance here from Caleb, he's hunching his back, he's raised one shoulder, and he's sort of slowly pushing this wheelchair through, and look at that determined, pensive stare that he's got going on, unblinking eyes, just focused. It's just all very unnerving. And then, couple that with the very sort of epic but disturbing and unnerving score. The craftsmanship, dudes. Ugh. Excellent use of not fully, diving right into the violence by giving us a full shot of it, just using the reflection of his glasses as he removes the scalp from the geezer to do the operation. It's cool because I feel like it almost, I don't know if it's from a certification point of view, but you could go from a 15 to an 18 or something. I don't know what the certification of this film is. What is it? It's 15. Yeah, you could easily go from a 15 to an 18. Boom! Look at that shit. By giving us a full-on violent shot of it. So it might be that reason, but it's also, look at even the red around the glasses frame there. I don't know, that there's likely some sort of red gelled light there to do that, but it's just, I love films that go from absolutely no violence to just brutality at the what do you call it, the kind of crescendo. I don't know, not that I'm some sort of sadist getting off on violence, but it just makes the violence more shocking. So in the grand scheme of things, this isn't like Hostel or Cannibal Holocaust levels of violence, which are two absolute torture porn. Fuck Cannibal Holocaust. Fuck that film. I won't get into it, but fuck that film. For so many reasons. Fuck that film. But those films are legit torture porn, where you get to see some of the most brutal bits of violence ever put on screen. What we've seen so far is he's caved in Caleb Landry Jones's head with is it a ball or something, just some sort of solid sphere. Caved it in, just hit him twice, blood, and then blood on the carpet. That's it. And then he's stabbed the dad with the stag's horns. What are they called? Horns? Yeah, whatever. The antlers. He stabbed him with the stag's antlers through the neck, and then we just had this deep red blood sort of drip down from his neck onto his chest and things like that. So in the grand scheme of things, not the most violent things you've ever seen in film or on film or in cinema. But the fact that it's such a... Not that it comes out of nowhere, because obviously the film... It makes sense within the film that we lead up to this. But it essentially does come out of nowhere in the sense that there hasn't really been any other violence prior in the film. They hit a deer early on, but there was a little bit of blood on the bonnet, and we only saw a small amount of blood on the actual deer itself. Not overtly violent. So it's much more shocking to the audience when you get these these payoffs. you know. So I really like that because it's more, it's not just like, you know, everybody says like Reservoir Dogs is like a really violent movie. There's no violence in it. Like, yeah, Tim Roth's shot in the belly and his t-shirt gets more and more soaked in blood as the film goes on. But up until the moment that he tortures the police officer and cuts his ear off and stuff, there's not really any violence in that film, if memory serves. You'll have to watch my podcast that I did on it to find out. And then from there on, you know, more and more violence happens. Likewise with The Hateful Eight, which I will cover eventually. The first half of the movie, there's no violence. And then from the second half of the movie onwards, there's a shit ton. So it's like the violence is more striking and shocking and more impactful to the audience and the execution of the story if it's not just littered throughout. And slight tangent, that's not to say films where it is required that violence happens throughout, like Saving Private Ryan, totally different kettle of fish. Totally different kettle of fish. We know at this point this bitch is a bitch and she sucks and fuck this person. Fucking psychopath is sat there with a bowl of dry cereal and a separate glass of milk and is individually picking up one piece of cereal, biting it in half. The smallest, most bite-sized food in existence. She's biting that shit in half, sipping her milk separately. Psycho! Psy-fucking-co!
I mean, I told you not to go in that house.
He's my favorite character in this film. Yep, that film. Get Out. Wow. It's outstanding. It's so layered. It's not only is it just a straight up thriller, like I was hopefully successfully explaining without, you know, grandstanding or whitesplaining, that like the social commentary is just, it's incredibly unique, thought-provoking, hopefully educational. It was certainly educational to me the first time I watched it, in terms of the social commentary. It's expertly crafted. It's just an exemplary movie. Yeah, I really love it. Jordan Peele is fucking insanely good. Yeah, so I'm gonna wrap it up there. I think it's just the credit roll from here, so there should be nothing left to talk about. And that payoff, that tends to be the thing with horror movies, is sometimes the payoff and, you know, the sort of crescendo and things sometimes leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's definitely awesome in this film. Yeah, so again, please rate, review, subscribe, you know, follow Spotify, subscribe to YouTube. It should always just be at Chatting Script. Yeah, follow the Instagram and the Twitter, both at Chatting Script. Comment on shit, like shit, just help your boy out. And I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Goodbye.